Hi everybody and welcome to Diana's Place. Today we're making a rustic apple tart. In France it's known as a galette. It's simple yet elegant and it's one of my favorite go-to recipes. So let's get started. So welcome back everybody. This French apple galette is really simple to make and it's just a few simple steps. So the first thing we're going to do is make pastry. If you've never made pastry, it can be intimidating, so I'm going to show you how and make it really simple. I promise you, you'll make your own pastry from now on. Everything's going to go into this bowl, starting with the flour. We have 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, and we'll have 1 tablespoon of white granulated sugar. We'll do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I have lost my 1/4 teaspoon, so you'll see me put 2 of these in. These are 1/8 of a teaspoon. So I'm not overdoing the salt. And we're going to give that just a little whisk to make sure it's just evenly combined. And now we're going to add butter. This is unsalted butter. We've just added salt, so we don't need salted. The Plugra is the European butter I always use. It's perfect for this. And we're going to have a 1/2 cup go in. Now, when you make pastry, you want to make sure everything that you're using with the water and the butter is cold as it can be. That's the secret to your pastry turning out flaky, so that when it bakes, you have those little air pockets. That's that flaky texture we're always looking for in good pastry. So this is 1 cup. I'm going to do 1/2 cup. And to get it started for blending, I'm going to already put it into some chunks. I have taught little children how to make pastry because I believe everybody should know how to make pastry, and they make it and it turns out beautifully every time. So I'm going to just drop this into the flour. So we have all the butter in the bowl now. This pastry blender is a favorite of mine because it has a sharp edge. A lot of pastry blenders will just be like a wire whisk, sort of just a smooth piece of metal, and it doesn't cut as well. So find one that's sharper. And what I'm going to do is just work it into the flour until it's crumbly, sort of like small peas. You'll see that in a lot of recipes, that description of what it's supposed to look like, and I will show you exactly what I mean. So the butter's cold and it's just going to be roughly chopped into the flour. So a few times through while I'm making it, I'll take my knife and just push that butter back through because it gets kind of caught up into the pastry blender. So you just want to push it out and get it back into the flour so you can work it again. You can see it's getting crumbly, but it's still too lumpy, so I'm going to keep going. This only takes a minute or 2, so it's very quick to make. I will make my pastry sometimes a month in advance of needing it because it stores in the freezer perfectly. And you can make this apple galette in a matter of minutes if you've got your pastry made. Okay, so I'm going to show you what this looks like because it's the right consistency now. There's chunks of butter in there. See that? Perfect. Now we're going to add ice cold water. We need about 3 tablespoons, maybe 3 1/2. Now all-purpose flours are not the same. Sometimes they will absorb more quickly the water and require a little bit more. Some don't require as much. So you just have to have a feel, and I'm going to show you the texture you're looking for. So with the flour I'm using, I know that I need 3 1/2 tablespoons exactly. But if yours is a little too dry, add just a tiny bit more. And I'm going to show you. This is where it gets a little fine-tuned. So this is ice cold water, 1 tablespoon. Hardly seems like enough, I know, but it is for now. So I'm just going to work that in. I sprinkled it on, and it's kind of like, where did that water go? But trust me, it's working. That's 1 tablespoon. Now we're going to add the next tablespoon. Keep count. This is 2. And I kind of sprinkle it around the edge. And I have a fork, and I'm just going to work that in delicately, just tossing that flour inward towards the butter and getting that water just distributed through. We're doing the 3rd, 3. We're almost there. I'm telling you, it's not going to look like it's enough water, but it is. We have a ½ tablespoon to add. You can kind of see it coming together a bit. Okay, so I'm getting that dry flour towards the middle, and I'm putting in my ½ tablespoon. That's a ½ tablespoon. So now I get my hands into it. I'm going to work with it quickly so that I don't melt the butter. The heat of my hands can melt the butter. So I've got my hands going right in this bowl. I'm going to squeeze it together. So you see it looks kind of crumbly, but it's pulling together. You've got to trust that it's going to pull together. So the first time you make it, try the 3½ tablespoons and see if it works for you. That would be my recommendation. And if it seems like it's a bit too crumbly, it's still going to be delicious. So you're not going to fail, I promise. But you may fine tune it for your own liking. I'll pull it out here for you to see. Look at that. It's so perfect. When you make a lot of pastry, you get to know your pastry. I would suggest making galettes all the time. It's so much easier than making a pie. Pies are fussy. You have to roll them out. It has to fit into the glass container. You have to flute it. I mean, they're beautiful, but this is the way to make a pie in a quick manner. Okay, that's it. So this is going to go in the fridge. If I was to use this for my recipe, I would get it chilled until it's firm, but I could still roll it out. Just about 30 minutes in my fridge. Shape it into a disc and kind of flatten it out, and that will get you started when you come back to roll it out. So now we're going to prep the apples. I like to use good old-fashioned Granny Smith apples for this. They hold their shape, they have a perfect taste and texture. If you want to use something else, you're welcome to try it, but you do want to have an apple that will hold its shape because it makes it pretty. So I like to take a vegetable peeler and just peel the apples. I've already prepped most of what I need. We'll use 3 apples. This makes for just even cuts, way easier than using a paring knife, and so quick. So I'm just going to trim the ends. Now, if you're going to prep these a little bit in advance, just rub a tiny bit of lemon juice over it, and it'll keep them from turning brown, which is what I did to prepare for today's show. Now I'm going to cut it from the top to the bottom, and I'm going to take this melon baller and core it. It's easier than coring the apple. You know how you can go top to bottom? This is so much easier. And then we'll just trim the little bit right there. So now I'm going to show you how to cut these. I'm going to lay it flat down, take the knife, and then hold it. I'm going to turn it so you can see. These are going to be thin slices, sort of between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to make little stacks, and then I'm going to show you how to make it so pretty in the tart. It's beautiful. Okay, so we have our little stacks of apples all ready to go, and they're fun to fan out, and I'll show you how to do that. Now we're going to prep the pastry. So I have a piece of parchment paper I've cut exactly to the size of the sheet that I'm going to put into the oven. So you'll see it will slide right on. I highly recommend you have a sheet with no sides because it's going to be almost impossible to slide it on if it has edges. So keep that in mind. So we're going to take this pastry, sprinkling a little bit of flour on both sides. I'm going to move this onto the paper. So we're going to build this galette right on the paper that goes into the oven. This pastry is actually the perfect temperature. It's a little cool, quite cool, but it's moving easily. You can see the chunks of butter. Yum. That's what melts and creates that texture that you want. I'm going to add a little more flour. You don't want it sticking. This is fun to make because it's casual, yet it's elegant. So it has a nice little rustic French country style to it. In the summer, I'll fill it with blueberries or strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, and sugar, and it's just so delicious. Lots and lots of flexibility with this dessert, but the apple is the classic and one that I think would be a great one for you to start with. So the pastry is rolled out to 12 inches in diameter. Now we're going to take the apples and fan them out. We're going to start in the center and then work around. I'm going to take the little end pieces off We can use those to fill in any gaps afterwards. Okay, I'm just going to fan it out like this. So you want it somewhat flat so that when it's cooking, they cook evenly. Now we're just going to take little sections, take the end pieces off, and just work around, making it fit tightly. I'm just going to work it around like this. The pastry is going to be folded up and around the apples, so don't stress if it's not just absolutely perfect, because I promise you it's going to be beautiful. My apples have turned just a little bit brown, but it's totally fine. So I can see where there's some little gaps. I'm just going to pop that in there like that. I can see that my perimeter is a little wide, so I'm going to come back with some of these extra pieces and just slide them in. These little side pieces will be covered up, so they don't have to be, you know, as fanned out and as perfectly pretty. So I want to leave about 1.5 to 2 inch border. So now we're going to sprinkle this with cinnamon sugar. I have 2 tablespoons of white granulated sugar with 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to give it a stir just to make sure that cinnamon is well mixed in there. I'm just going to put this all over the apples. There's not a lot of sugar in this. So there's our cinnamon sugar. Now I'm going to take some more of the unsalted butter and just dot the top of it, and that'll caramelize it and give it a nice brown bubbly topping when it cooks. A little more butter. Why not, right? So now we've got everything assembled. I'm going to pull the pieces of the parchment paper up and over the apples to get started, like this, and kind of pinch it together. And then just from here, this is what gives it that nice rustic look. You may need to push your apples together just a little bit. You really want to be careful that you don't get a crack in the edge. So the parchment just works as a little extra help to fold that pastry up. Okay, so now I'm going to take my hands and just kind of push it so that it's round. It's really rustic and casual, but when it bakes, it turns out beautifully. So I'm putting just a little extra flour around the edge because that butter's gotten a bit soft and I don't want it to leak out. So I'm giving it a little extra support here. So now I'm going to put this into the fridge for 20 to 30 minutes to get it cold, and then I'll put it in the oven. That way the butter goes in cold again, and when it cooks, the butter melts quickly and creates those pockets. I don't want it to be soft going into the oven now. So 20 minutes and in the oven. The galette has been in the fridge for about 25 to 30 minutes. It's nice and cold and ready to go in. I have the oven on 425 and it's going in for 15 minutes. And then I'm going to lower the temperature and cook it for another 30 to 40 minutes until the apples are tender when I pierce them with a fork. Okay, so the galette has just come out of the oven. It was in for 15 minutes at 425 and then exactly 35 minutes at 375, and it's perfect. The apples are tender and the pastry is just a nice golden brown. It's gonna cool for about 20 minutes and then it can be served on a plate. So there you go, it looks great. So the galette has cooled for about 20 minutes and it's all ready to eat. It's beautiful. I hope you'll try it. I think you'll love it. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed today's show, please hit the like button, subscribe, leave comments, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Until next time, take care, everybody. This particular pastry blender, okay, that's a bit of a tongue tie. Every couple of seconds, no, because a little drier pastry makes for a better. See, I'm not stressing about the edges, which for me is, you know, well, I am actually, because look at that. You may not want to put that in there. At that time, I'm going to lower the temperature to 375 and cook it for another, I don't know how long, for another 30 to 40 minutes until it's done and those apples are really tender fork. Tender fork? Fork tender. Jesus. So there you go. It looks great. Thank you. I don't want to say thank you. Uh-oh. Let me get rid of sign.